Our next topic is about crimes against chastity. Crimes against chastity, and there are adultery, concubinates, acts of lasciviousness, qualified seduction, simple seduction, acts of lasciviousness with consent of the offended party, corruption of minors, white slave trade, forcible abduction, and consented abduction. Sa una nato na itong rape, pero i-amend na siya. Di ba na-transfer na ang rape dito sa crimes against persons? If you can remember, nag-discuss na sa rape, crimes against persons. So we'll dive in sa adultery and concubinates. So who are guilty of adultery? That's Article 333. Adultery is committed by any married woman who shall have sexual intercourse with a man not her husband, and by the man who has carnal knowledge of her, knowing her to be married, even if the marriage be subsequently declared void. Adultery shall be punished by prison correctional in its medium and maximum periods. If the person guilty of adultery committed this offense while being abandoned without justification by the offended spouse, the penalty next lower in degree than that provided in the next preceding paragraph shall be imposed. Kani siya crime of the woman ni siya. Sa mag-asawa, ang kasalaan ni ang babae. Babae karon ang nagkikihilawa sa laing lalaki nga dili niya bana. Is committed by a married woman who shall have sexual intercourse with a man not her husband. And then katong tao pod nga nagkikihilawa sa iya, kabalo siya nga minyo siya. Okay? Knowing her to be married. So even if the marriage be subsequently declared void. But on the part of the girl, mora na iyang violation, no? Kadang nakikihalawa sa lalaki. On the part of the guy, adultery gyapon, pero dili na siya pwede ma-file ang kaso adultery kung dili pod filean ang babae. So dapat sila gyud ang duha ang filean. It shall be punished by prison correctional. Ang babae pod nag-abandon na sa bana pag nakakommit siya adultery, mapanis gyapon siya, pero this time lower na in degree, no? Next lower in degree. So what are the elements of adultery? That the woman is married, that she has sexual intercourse with a man not her husband, that as regards the man with whom she has sexual intercourse, he must know her to be married. And I discuss it even if the marriage be subsequently declared void. This is with respect to the guy, ha. In view of this phrase used in Article 33, it's not necessary that there be a valid marriage between the offended husband and the guilty woman. There's adultery even if the marriage of the guilty woman with the offended husband is subsequently declared void. So the reason is, at no time the bond of matrimony contained a defect which by itself is sufficient to dissolve the union until the marriage is declared to be null and void by competent authority in a final judgment. The offense to the vows taken and the attack on the family exists. The adultery reunites the essential conditions required for its punishment. So in this case, the offended husband had been married to China before he married the accused Jacinta Mata in the Philippines. So carnal knowledge can be proved by circumstantial evidence. Pwede ba? So ang adultery, pwede ba siya, wala makitaan, pwede ba siya ma-file ang adultery? The answer is yes, no? The finding in the position of a married woman of several love letters signed by her paramour, their having been together in different places, and the fact that they were surprised in a well-known assignation house which the accused woman admitted to have visited 6 times in company with her paramour are data indications sufficient to convict them both of adultery. So ang evidence which is sufficient, considered sufficient, 1, photograph showing the intimate relations of the two accused. Ano ganyan sa FB, mag-FB ka tapos mag-kusgakos mo dito, mag-sweet kayo mo, pwede na siya ebidensya sa adulterous relationship, no? Testimony of a witness to the effect that the two accused were in scant apparel and sleeping together. Such evidence is sufficient to show that the two accused had the opportunity to satisfy their adulterous inclination. So direct proof of carnal knowledge is not necessary to sustain conviction for adultery. In the very nature of things, it is seldom that adultery can be established by direct evidence. The legal tenet, therefore, has been and still is that circumstantial and corroborative evidence, such as will lead the guarded discretion of a reasonable and just man to the conclusion that the criminal act of adultery has been committed, which will suffice to bring about a conviction for that crime. In the instant case, defendant lived together as husband and wife, in different places. So at diverse times and for certain periods, and actually were seen lying together at late hours of the night in their underwears and caressing and embracing each other. These facts more than sufficiently prove the crime herein involved. So is sexual intercourse constitute crime of adultery? So kung kadaghan mo na intercourse, kadaghan mo sakpan, another crime of adultery na siya. The gist of the crime of adultery is the danger of introducing spurious heirs into the family, where the rights of the real heirs may be impaired and a man may be charged with maintenance of a family not his own. Kalain, no? Imang ginabuhi, di din yung anak. I remember ko itong isa joke nga, pa siya, na siya 13 kabuk anak. Sunod, 13 kabuk anak. Ang pangalan sa yang anak, sa yang 13 ka anak is mga lalaki mong puros, Chimboy. So pag ingon niya, Chimboy, dali na. Tuulang 13 kabuk siya ha. Oh, Chimboy, nakaw na sugon ta tanan 13 kabuk. Oh, at tupod sa kwan. Isa lang kwan. So, iyang pangutana na nangutana na curious. Sa mga naman inaman yung pagtawag. Para kaisa ra. Ano siya? Para kaisa lang katawagan. Sugo tanan, kaisa lang yun. What about kung kuan, saan mo pag-determine nga siya na siya? Mo na siya ang kuan, mo na siya ang yung buhaton kung individual mo tawagon niya, mo gyud ay mo pabuhaton siya. Kung saan mo pag-determine nga siya na? Kay parehas mo sila pangalan. Tawagon ako sa ilang last name. Tawagon do sa ilang last name. Sila lain ay amahan ng mga bata dahil last name ang tawagon. Sila katawagan, kuanan niya, pero kung individual na tawagon niya sa last name, Guido. So, lain-lain amahan ng mga bata. Concubines, 334. Any husband, this time, ang lalaki ang nakasala. Husband ha, yung partner, of course, lain babae. Any husband who shall keep a mistress in the conjugal dwelling or shall have sexual intercourse under scandalous circumstances with a woman who is not his wife or shall cohabit with her in any place shall be punished by prison correctional in its minimum and medium periods. The concubine shall suffer the penalty of dischero. Yung muna yung concubine na dischero din siya, hindi siya mapriso pero dischero yung punishment. 3 ways of committing the crime of concubinates. 1. By keeping a mistress in the conjugal dwelling. 2. By having sexual intercourse under scandalous circumstances with a woman who is not his wife. And 3, by cohabiting with her in any other place. Kanamang live-in good. So, para siya, adultery na siya. Ang makafile ana is, of course, ang katong iyang asawa. Kanina sa concubinates din siya. Kanina sa adultery, ang makafile ang iyang husband. Karon sa concubinates, ang makafile iyang asawa. Elements that the man must be married, that he committed any of the following acts: keeping a mistress in a conjugal dwelling, having sexual intercourse under scandalous circumstances with a woman who is not his wife, cohabiting with her in any other place. As regards to woman, she must know him to be married. Wala nakabutang diri pero wala nakabutang sa kuano, any husband have under scandalous with a woman who is not his wife. Wala nakabutang diri that the woman must know that she is married. But sa letter on na mga decisions sa Supreme Court, isa sa element ng ang iyang concubine must have to know nga married ang lalaki. Kay kung wala siya kabalo nga married ang lalaki, pwede siya ma-acquit sa concubinates. Kay siyempre, ang lalaki maligaw niya para lang magustuhan, buhaton to mingon na lalaki, mangilad na usahay ba. Mingon na lalaki, single lagi ko, wala yung kalbilingan, pwede ta kapakaslan karon da. So, mahaylo siya, labi na kanang gwapuhan po siya sa lalaki, so nadala siya, pero not knowing na married ay siya. So, pag-file kaso sa iya karon, to the point na, wala ko kabalo nga married ay ka. Kasakal po niya lalaki ka na siya. Isa na siya sa indication na wala siya kabalo nga married ang lalaki. So, pwede siya ma-acquit sa kaso ng concubinates. But kung mag-guilty siya, found guilty sa kaso ng concubinates, hindi po siya mapriso. Ay, ang ihang penalty is dischero lang man. Kumana ang concubinates ha. Who is a mistress? Although, ano ang mga definition, mistress. Although Josefa Diaz lived in the house of the spouses Hilaw, she was never considered as a concubine of accused Jesus Hilaw. She was voluntarily taken and sheltered thereat and treated as an adopted child by the spouses. She did not live, dwell, or remain in the spouse's dwelling in any capacity other than as a child or ward by the spouses. In view of the rulings in the case of people, it is necessary that the woman is taken by the accused into the conjugal dwelling as a concubine. So what is a conjugal dwelling? It is meant the home Spent the home of the husband and wife, even if the wife happens to be temporarily absent on any account. A house constructed from the proceeds of the sale of conjugal properties of the spouses, especially where they had intended it to be so, is a conjugal dwelling, and the fact that the wife never had a chance to reside therein and that the husband used it with his mistress instead does not detract from its nature. So conjugal dwelling para basta kay ilang ang fans sa conjugal sa mag-asawa may gamit pagpahimo sa balay, so that would still be called conjugal dwelling. Scandal consists in any reprehensible word or deed that offends public conscience, redounds to the detriment of the feeling of honest persons, and gives occasion to the neighbor's spiritual damage or ruin. The scandal produced by the concubinage of a married man occurs not only when he and his mistress live in the same room of a house, but also when they appear together in public and perform acts in sight of the community, which gives rise to criticism and general protest among the neighbors. So the qualifying expression under scandalous circumstances refers to the act of sexual intercourse which may be proved by circumstantial evidence. What is cohabit? The term cohabit means to dwell together in the manner of husband and wife for some period of time, as distinguished from occasional transient interviews for unlawful intercourse. Hence, the offense is not a single act of adultery. It is cohabiting in a state of adultery which may be a week, a month, a year, or longer. Thus, there is no concubinage if a married man is surprised in the act of sexual intercourse with a woman not his wife in a hotel. Concubinage. Thus, also a person who keeps a mistress in an apartment furnished by him is not guilty of concubinage if he does not live or sleep with her in said apartment. Adultery is more severely punished than concubinage. The reason is because adultery makes possible the introduction of another man's blood into the family so that the offended husband may have another man's son bearing his name and receiving support from him. So mas dako yung punishment ang adultery kaysa concubinage. Rape and acts of lasciviousness. As I have stated a while ago, rape has been transferred from crimes against chastity to crimes against persons, no? And gi-repeal na ni siya at under Article 335. It is repealed by Republic Act number 8353, otherwise known as the Anti-Rape Law of 1997, which took effect on October 22, 1997. C554 of this book 2. 554 is atong under sa crimes against persons. So we will no longer be discussing Article 335 because it's already been discussed. So kung magkwista, di nato ni appeal ni Article 335 ha. Wala na nilabot sa atong quiz. So let's go to Article 336, Acts of Lasciviousness. Any person who shall commit any act of lasciviousness upon other persons of either sex under any of the circumstances mentioned in the preceding article shall be punished by prison correctional. Dili na rin siya kwan. Wala na yung sex ani, kundi hikap-hikap na lang, hikap-hikap, nakuhit-kuhit. Maraming mga elements sa acts of lasciviousness, that the offender commits any act of lasciviousness of lewdness. Any act of lasciviousness of lewdness. That the act of lasciviousness is committed against a person of either sex. Pwede lalaki, pwede babae, no? That is done under any of the following circumstances: by using force or intimidation. A. B. When the offended party is deprived of reason or otherwise unconscious. C. By means of fraudulent machination or grave abuse of authority. D. When the offended party is under 12 years of age or is demented. So gibastos ni siya, gibastos. Kani siyang acts of lasciviousness. Of course, walay consent ang imuhang ang gibastos ani, way consent. So wala gani consent kay gamit ang force or intimidation, hulga. Tapos when the offended party is deprived of reason or otherwise unconscious, nakatulog or nahubog, by means of fraudulent machination, nailad or grave abuse of authority, gilad. Pakaslan talaga ka, sige na. So nagpahilabot. When the offended party is under 12 years of age, this is kung rape pa rin siya, statutory rape kay under 12 years of age man. Pero hindi siya acts of lasciviousness na. Even if of course wala gani siya consent. Sabi lewd defined. It is defined as obscene, lustful, Indecent, lecherous, it signifies the form of immorality which has relation to moral impurity or that which is carried on a wanton manner. So, may example, compelling a girl to dance naked before a group of men is an act of lasciviousness, even if the dominant motive is revenge for her failure to pay a debt. Motive of lascivious acts is not important because the essence of lewdness is in the very act itself. Embracing, kissing, and holding a girl's breast is act of lasciviousness. At ano siyang basahan na, taking advantage of the fact that Paula Bautista, a young married woman, was alone in her house with no companion but her 3-year-old child who was then asleep, the accused between 3 and 4 o'clock in the afternoon went to the house of said woman on the pretext of asking for a glass of water, stealthily approached her and, without giving her an opportunity to defend herself, embraced and kissed her and caught hold of his breasts. When Paula recovered from the shock, she defended herself as best as she could, and in spite of the fact that the accused threatened to kill her with a dagger if she did not accede to his desire, she beat him on the right side of the chest, thereby forcing him to release her instantly. So the foregoing proven facts constitute a crime of acts of lasciviousness. In some cases, touching the breast of a woman is considered unjust vexation only. So in the case where the accused inside a Catholic church and after the service had begun approached a girl from behind and forcibly embraced and kissed her on the left cheek, at the same time fondled her breast, it was held that the accused was guilty of only unjust vexation. The Court of Appeal said, considering the religious atmosphere in the presence of many persons, the conduct of the accused cannot be considered lascivious. He performed the said acts either to spite the girl or to force her to accept him as a lover. So, ma-unjust vexation na siya kung wala lewd designs. So, the presence of or absence of lewd designs is inferred from the nature of the acts themselves and their environmental circumstances. In the instant case, in view of the manner, place, and time under which the acts complained of were done, lewd designs can hardly be attributed to the accused. The factual setting, schoolroom, in the presence of complainants, students, and within hearing distance of your co-teachers, rules out a conclusion that the accused was actuated by a lustful design or purpose, that his conduct was lewd or lascivious. It may be that he did embrace the girl and kiss her, but this of itself would not necessarily bring the case within the provision of Article 336 of the revised penal. But it is different when the act is committed in a theater. Kanang wala na yung tao, no? O nasa sulod sa sinihan. Ay hilabot-hilabot din sa sulod sa sinihan, taparan ni mo ang sa babae, tapos hinahinay kag kamang, hinahinay ni mo kaya pasay mong kamot dito sa iyang kamot pod, kung dili mo mahawa yung kamot dito na sa lain, mo advance na dito na sa paa, to lain na magunito. Yan, acts of lasciviousness na. Pero kung palang eventually, pwede ka ma-file ang kaso. Kissing and embracing a woman against her will are acts of lasciviousness when prompted by lust or lewd designs. Lovers' embraces and kisses are not acts of lasciviousness. Lahat yun yung lovers, no, kanang na-inlove ka ba? Lahat itong, di rin na makitaan karon ang difference between na-inlove ka or gilibugan lang ka ba? Na-inlove ka or nanguwagra ka. Ay kung na-inlove ka, dili ka ma-charge of lasciviousness. Pero kung kanang nanguwag ka, ma-charge yung kag lasciviousness. Mga nakaroon ang difference sila ang duha. Placing a man's private parts over the girl's genital organ is an act of lasciviousness. Thus, a man who threw a 7 to 10-year-old girl upon the floor, placed his private parts upon her or over her ears, and remained in that position or made motion of sexual intercourse is guilty of acts of lasciviousness under Article 326. Abuses against chastity, Article 246, is committed by a public officer and that a mere immoral or indecent proposal made earnestly and persistently is sufficient. Whereas in crimes against chastity, the offender is in the majority of cases a private individual and it is necessary that some actual act of lasciviousness should have been executed by the offender. Dahil ito attempted rape, attempted rape, the manner of committing the crime is the same. That is, force or intimidation is employed by means of fraudulent machination or grave abuse of authority, or the offended party is deprived of reason or otherwise unconscious, under 12 years of age is demented. The offended party in both crimes is a person of either sex. The performance of acts of lasciviousness, lascivious character is common to both crimes. The differences are if the acts performed by the offender clearly indicate that his purpose was to lie with the offended woman, it is attempted or frustrated rape. In the case of attempted rape, the lascivious acts are but the preparatory acts to the commission of rape, whereas in the other, the lascivious acts are themselves the final objective sought by the offender. So it is not attempted rape when there's no intent to have sexual intercourse. Seduction. Seduction means enticing a woman to unlawful sexual intercourse by promise of marriage or other means of persuasion without use of force. Wala siya force, wala use of force, pero entice niya ang woman to unlawful sexual. So there are two kinds of seduction, qualified seduction and simple seduction. Article 337, qualified seduction, the seduction of a virgin over 12 years and under 18 years of age. Kung kuan siya, 12 years and below, dili na siya seduction ha. Bisa pag na-consent na siya, 12 years, it's statutory rape yun siya. But so, mo nang mention din nga over 12 years and under 18 years of age para ma-distinguish ang statutory rape o ang qualified seduction. So, to continue, is committed by any person in public authority, press, so qualified siya kay na siya authority, pari siya, house servant, domestic, guardian, teacher, or any person who in any capacity shall be entrusted with the education or custody of the woman seduced shall be punished by prison correctional in its minimum and medium periods. So take note of the age. Ang qualifying age niya, qualified siya by public authority, press siya, house servant, kan mga boy, domestic, mga maid, guardian, teacher, or any person who in any capacity shall be entrusted with the education or custody of the woman. In short, na siya ay moral ascendancy, no? Shall be punished by prison correctional in its minimum and medium periods. The penalty next higher degree shall be imposed upon any person who shall seduce his sister or descendant, o iyang descendant, anak, apo, whether or not she be a virgin or over 18 years of age. Higher ang penalty. Under the provisions of this chapter, seduction is committed when the offender has carnal knowledge of any of the persons under the circumstances described herein. So, two classes of qualified seduction. Seduction of a virgin over 12 years and under 18 years of age by certain persons, such as a person of authority, priest, teacher, etc. And seduction of a sister by her brother or descendant by her ascendant, regardless of her age or reputation. So, elements of qualified seduction of a virgin. That the offended party is a virgin, which is presumed if she is unmarried and of good reputation, that she must be over 12 and under 18 years of age, that the offender has sexual intercourse with her. So, kung ang babae, even if 12 years or up to 18 years of age, pero kung siya sex worker siya, dili na siya qualified seduction, no? Dili naman siya virgin, of course. That the offender has sexual intercourse with her, that there is abuse of authority, confidence, or relationship on the part of the offender. So, ano sa meaning sa virginity? The crime of qualified seduction requires that the victim must be virgin. The crime of consented abduction also requires that the offended party must be a virgin. The meaning of virginity, therefore, must be the same for both crimes. The virginity to which the penal code refers to is not to be understood in so material a sense as to exclude the idea of abduction of a virtuous woman of good reputation. There must be sexual intercourse in qualified seduction. Who could be the offenders in qualified seduction? The offenders are those who abuse their authority, person in public authority, guardian, teacher, person who in any capacity is entrusted with the education or custody of the woman seduced, and those who abuse confidence reposed in them, priest, house servant, domestic, those who abuse the relationship, brother who seduces his sister, ascendant who seduces his descendant. What makes the crime or qualified seduction? The acts would not be punished were it not for the character of the person committing the same, on account of the excess of power or abuse of confidence of which the offender availed himself. Deceit is not an element of qualified seduction. So it is settled that deceit, although an essential element of simple seduction, does not need to be proved in a charge of qualified seduction. It is replaced by abuse of confidence. The fact that the girl gave consent to the sexual intercourse is no defense. Lack of consent on the part of the girl to the sexual intercourse is not an element of the offense. Qualified seduction by a master. If the master shall have sexual intercourse with a female servant, a virgin over 12 but less than 18 years of age. It is also qualified seduction covered by the phrase any person with any capacity shall be entrusted with the custody of the woman seduced. Qualified seduction by head of family, a person who had sexual intercourse with a cousin of his wife, then living with them in the house, and a virgin under 18 years old but over 12 years is guilty of qualified seduction. He took advantage of his authority and abused the confidence and trust reposed in him as head of family and master of the house. Qualified seduction by a brother-in-law. If the moral tendency of the brother-in-law instead were used for immoral purposes, then certainly there is more than ample justification for adherence to the view first announced in the landmark Arlington decision that thereby the offense of qualified seduction was in fact committed. Qualified seduction committed by a priest. When the girl went to the church to confess, the priest upon meeting her embraced and kissed her. The priest made her lie on the floor and had sexual intercourse with her. The priest was guilty of qualified seduction. Naunsa ba? Pariya. Qualified seduction by house servant. A servant in the house was sexual intercourse with the master's daughter, a virgin over 12 but less than 18 years of age, is guilty of qualified seduction. Meaning of domestic. Domestic is a person usually living under the same roof pertaining to the same house. Example, a man, a distant relation of family, secured board and lodging in the house of an aunt of a girl of about 14 years old, was also living there. The man, the girl, and the aunt and her husband all live in the same house as one family. The man is considered a domestic. Okay. Dili lang kuan maid. I was telling you about it, the maid shop, but dili siya. I stand corrected. The man is considered domestic. Basta inaani nga situation, no? The term domestic includes all those persons residing with the family and who are members of the same household, regardless of the fact that their residence may only be temporary or that they may be paying for their board and lodging. The son of the owner of the house who seduced a servant girl in that house is guilty of qualified seduction as a domestic. Where the defendant seduced a servant girl working in his brother's home, it appearing that the defendant was residing with his said brother, it was held that the case should be considered as coming within the term domestic as used in Article 337. But if the man is merely stopping at the public inn or tavern when he seduced the landlord's daughter, the man is not a domestic. So domestic is distinct from house servant. I stand corrected. Because of the intimacy and convenience existing among various members of a household, opportunities for committing seduction are more frequent. Qualified seduction by seducing a sister or descendant. Next higher in degree ni siya. The seduction of a sister or descendant is known as incest. Virginity of the sister or descendant is not required and she may be over 80 years of age. A relationship must be by consanguinity. The relationship need not be legitimate. If the sister or descendant is under 12 years of age, the crime would be rape. If she is married and over 12 years of age, it would be adultery. Qualified seduction by seducing a daughter is illustrated in the case of People versus Fajardo. Now let's go to simple seduction. The seduction of a woman who is single or a widow of good reputation over 12 but under 18 years of age committed by means of deceit shall be punished by arresto mayor. What are the elements? That the offended party is over 12 and under 18 years of age, that she must be of good reputation, single or widow, that the offender has sexual intercourse with her, that it is committed by means of deceit. Sa papangilad gani, gilad siya. So, sa example sa simple seduction, the accused went to the house of his fiancée, her parents then being absent and availing himself of that opportunity with a renewal of his promise to make her his wife. He succeeded in having sexual intercourse with her. The accused is guilty of simple seduction, deceit, the usual form of which being an unfulfilled promise of marriage is an important element of the offense. Nalumlum ko itong istorya nga, kasal na siya siyang uyab, pero pagbisita siya, yap, dali sa balay kay wala sila mamag si papa. Nato na siya, pag ato niya dito kay ang sister man sa yang uyab, yang naabta niya, sexy kaayo. Niya intais ka rin siya. Putana, gusto ka ansa ko ha? Gusto ka, sa may plano nimo. Sa to nga ko na. Gusto ka kung gikilawas ako dali ginintayos ko siya ba. So kung nakay-plano, kung nakay-plano, babae siya. Kung nakay-plano, dali kay labon wala pa diri akong sister, wala pa diri akong dagan siya paggawas, dagan siya. Tingala mo ba yung dagan sa gawas, paggawas niya kay natin yung uyab nasa balon siguro kada dungog naman siguro mo ani nga joke, no. Narito yung uyab, sugat siya, pati ang mama papa, gisugat siya. Very good. kapasar ka sa amo ang pagsuway sa amo. Sus, may nalang yun. Kay, kung ginalapan ako sa kumbulsa ang kondom, bugha ako. My guy, nagbili na ako sa sakyanan ng kondom. Nagpasalamat siya sa kondom, nagbili niya sa iyong sakyanan. Held accused guilty of simple seduction, deceit, the usual form of which being an unfulfilled promise of marriage is an important element of the offense. The offended girl must be over 12 and under 18 years of age. Sa element niya, no? Virginity of offended party is not required. Ang sa may requirement niya, the phrase Article 338 uses the phrase a woman who is single or a widow of good reputation, apparently meaning that it is the widow who must be of good reputation. But Albert says that the offended party must be in good repute, because if she was a public woman or one of loose morals, the act would not be penalized by the code. It is not essential in simple seduction that the woman seduced be a virgin, as all that is necessary is that she is of good reputation. A woman who was raped before may be a victim of simple seduction provided she is a woman of good reputation. But a woman who had illicit relations with a number of men prior to accused sexual intercourse with her is not of good reputation. So in both qualified and simple seduction, there is sexual intercourse na. If there's no sexual intercourse and only acts of lewdness are performed, the crime is acts of lasciviousness. Acts of lasciviousness with the consent of offended party. So naalang yapon day penalty, no? Bisag nag-consent ang offended party para sa sinihan, katuganing ikamang kamot, dato sa kamot, tapos wala man ni palag. So, advance ang kamot dito na sa kuan sa paa, tapos ni paibabaw dito na nagunitan na yun niya. Wala mo ni palag. So, that's acts of lasciviousness, lewdness ana. Pero it is with the consent of the offended party. But nonetheless, the penalty of arresto mayor shall be imposed to punish any other acts of lasciviousness committed by the same persons and under the same circumstances as those provided in Article 327 and 338. That the offender commits acts of lasciviousness or lewdness sa element sa the acts are committed upon a woman who is a virgin or single or widow of good reputation under 18 years of age, but over 12 years, or a sister or descendant regardless of her reputation or age. That the offender accomplishes the acts by abuse of authority, confidence, relationship, or deceit. So male cannot be the offended party in this crime. Can a male be the offended party in the kind of acts of lasciviousness? No. Does not mention persons of either sex as the offended party. With the consent of offended party, this phrase is used entitled Article 39. The offended woman may have consented to the acts of lasciviousness being performed by the offender on her person, but the consent is obtained by abuse of authority, confidence, or relationship, or by means of deceit. So, by nailad siya, no? Matong ni consent siya, no? Article 340, corruption of minors. Any person who shall promote or facilitate the prostitution or corruption of persons under age to satisfy the lust of another shall be punished by pension mayor, and if the culprit is a public officer or employee, including those in government-owned or controlled corporations, he shall also suffer the penalty of temporary absolute disqualification. To satisfy the lust of another, nag-pimp ka na, gipimp ni mo siya, no? Note the phrase, to satisfy the lust of another, therefore, one who casts for her own ends does not incur the sanction of the law. Single act without abuse of authority or confidence is now a crime. Take note, corruption of minor siya by placing her at another's disposal for immoral purposes does not legally constitute a crime under Article 1340 is no longer authoritative. It's not necessary that the unchaste acts shall have been done. What the law punishes is the act of a pimp who facilitates the corruption of and not the performance of unchaste act upon the minor. A mere proposal will consummate the offense. Thus, a father who proposes to his daughter that she accompany a man to satisfy the lust of the latter commits consummated corruption of minors. The age of victims. The term person under age provided in Article 340 of the Revised Penal Code defining the punishing the crime of corruption of minors means a person below 21 years of age. Karon dili na siya 21 years of age, no, kundi 18 years of age na siya, below 18 years of age. Okay, child prostitution under Republic Act number 7610. Kuan siya kanang anti-child abuse law ni siya, 7610. Just read the provisions here. White slave trade 341. The penalty of prison correctional in its medium and maximum periods shall be imposed upon any person who in any manner or under any pretext shall engage in the business or shall profit by prostitution or shall enlist the services of women for the purpose of prostitution. Kani pimping na ganun siya, no? Profiting by prostitution. They are engaging in the business of prostitution, profiting by prostitution, enlisting the service of women for the purpose of prostitution. Nanay, tawag karon kanang escort. Escort, pinadisente nga pangalan ba? Escort ka or sa pala yung tawag ana, walk. Walk na karon, walker. Walker, no? O kung babae ka karon dire, naminaw ka, inom ka, walker ka, bastos na. Nasabtunan niyo ng walker kay ikuan siya, kana lain ang connotation ang walker. Let's go to abduction. Meaning of abduction. By abduction is meant the taking away of a woman from her house or the place where she may be for the purpose of carrying her to another place with intent to marry or corrupt her. So there are two kinds of abduction: forcible abduction and consented abduction. So under forcible abduction, the abduction of any woman against her will and with new designs, so binastos mo na, gusto lang yun siya mukha, no? Shall be punished by reclusion temporal. The same penalty shall be imposed in every case if the female abducted be under 12 years of age. So elements of forcible abduction: that the person abducted is any woman, regardless of her age, civil status or reputation; that the abduction is against her will; that the abduction is with due designs. A woman abducted may be married. Crimes against chastity where age and reputation of victims are immaterial, and they are rape, acts of lasciviousness against the will or without the consent of the offended party, qualified seduction of sister or descendant, and forcible abduction. Wala na kailangan age ni siya. The taking away of the woman must be against her will. That's one of the elements there. The taking away of the woman may be accomplished by means of deceit first and then by means of violence and intimidation. Sunod, if the female abducted is under 12 years of age, the crime is forcible abduction even if she voluntarily goes with her abductor. Sexual intercourse is not necessary in forcible abduction. For as long as na lang tong lewd design, no? Actual illicit relation with the female abducted did not be shown, the intent to seduce the girl is sufficient. If there was sexual intercourse after the forcible abduction and the offender used force or intimidation, or when the woman was deprived of reason, is demented or otherwise unconscious, or the victim was at 12 years of age, the offender is liable for the complex crime of forcible abduction with rape under Article 266-A in relation to Articles 335 and 342 of the Code. There can only be one complex crime of forcible abduction with rape. The crime of forcible abduction was only necessary for the first rape. Thus, the subsequent acts of rape can no longer be considered as separate complex crimes of forcible abduction with rape. They should be detached from and considered independently of the forcible abduction. Therefore, accused should be convicted of one complex crime of forcible abduction with rape and three separate acts of rape. So, sa magsunod na gani ang rape, lahat na itong dili na to complex crime of forcible abduction with rape, kundi rape na yun siya. Is there a complex crime of forcible abduction with attempted rape? Taka ba appellant in grabbing the victim while she was walking towards Barrio San Agustin and dragging her into the cornfields some 40 meters away from the footpath, where by means of force he tried to have sexual intercourse with her but did not perform all the acts necessary to consummate such purpose, only constitutes abduction and not abduction complex with attempted rape, because the appellant took away the victim for the purpose of corrupting her. In other words, the attempt to rape her is absorbed by the abduction, being the element of new design of the latter. 343, consented abduction. The abduction of a virgin over 12 and under 18 years of age carried out with her consent and with due design shall be punished by penalty of person correctional in its minimum and medium periods. The elements are that the offended party must be a virgin, consented abduction siya, that she must be over 12 and under 18 years of age, that the taking away of the offended party must be with her consent after solicitation or cajolery from the offender. The taking away of the offended party must be with lewd design. So nanagapon ang mention to the virginity, not to be understood in some material sense as to exclude the idea of abduction of various women of good reputation. Thus, even if the accused had sexual intercourse with the girl before they eloped, there is still a case of abduction with consent. But when the offended party had carnal knowledge with other men by chaste character of the girl, the chaste character of the girl is open to question. Let's go to another provisions. Provisions relative to preceding chapter subtitle 11. Prosecution of the crimes of adultery, concubinage, seduction, abduction, rape, and acts of lasciviousness. Ilabot ang rape dire kay dili naman siya against chastity ning rape dire. So, cross out nato ang rape diri karon. The crimes of adultery and concubinage shall not be prosecuted except upon the complaint filed by the offended spouse. So, katong yung offended party lang yun ang makafile. Pero sa rape, pwede na dili offended party ang makafile. Pwede na mga ginikanan, minor, pwede mo file. The offended party cannot institute criminal prosecution without including both the guilty parties if they are both alive, nor in any case if he shall have consented or pardoned the offenders. The offenses of seduction, abduction, rape, or acts of lasciviousness shall not be prosecuted except upon a complaint filed by the offended party or her parents, grandparents, or guardian, nor in any case if the offender has been expressly pardoned by the above-named persons as the case may be. Well, nalagyan pa rin parents o grandparents o guardians, no? Pero dito man sa rape na, sa crime against person, pwede na dili parents, dili grandparents, dili guardian mo file, pwede ang authority, ang police. Pwede mo file ang police bisag walay consent sa offended party, parents, grandparents, or guardian. In cases of seduction, abduction, acts of lasciviousness, and rape, the merits of the offender with the offended party shall extinguish the criminal action or remit the penalty already imposed upon him. The provisions of this paragraph, so seduction, abduction, acts of lasciviousness, rape, and rape shall also be applicable to the co-principals, accomplices, and accessories after the fact of the above-mentioned crimes. And rape may be prosecuted the official pursuant to Republic Act No. 8353, the Anti-Rape Law of 1997. Rape is a crime against person which may be prosecuted de officio, meaning by the police officers. Prosecution of rape may be made upon complaint by any person as a crime against persons and thus may be prosecuted even without a complaint filed by the offended party. It can now be instituted by any person. Itong dirimanggod sa chastity na ang offended party, ang parents, guardian, grandparents, moral ang makafile, no? There is a rape na karon nga nana sa crime against person, pwede na makafile any person, no? So, ang pasabot karon, with the offended parties of age and is in complete possession of mental and physical faculties, siya ron can file a complaint. File lang to ang parents, makafile lang parents, ang guardian, o ang grandparents, kung minor pa ang offended party. Pero kung dili na siya minor, of legal age na siya na gyud pwede mo file, dili na pwede makafile ang iyang parents and other relatives. Civil liability of persons guilty of crimes against chastity. Persons guilty of rape, seduction, or abduction shall also be sentenced to indemnify the offended woman, to acknowledge the offspring unless the law should prevent him from doing so. In every case, to support the offspring, the adulterer and the concubine in the case provided Article 333 and 334 may also be sentenced in the same proceeding or in separate civil proceeding to indemnify for damages caused to the offended spouse. Kahit to acknowledge the offspring, hindi siya pwede sa adult kanang daghan ng may mga exemptions ani to acknowledge the offspring under the law unless the law should prevent him from doing so. Moral damages may be recovered by both by the offended party and both by her parents. Moral damages in crimes against chastity, it may be recovered in seduction, abduction, rape, or other lascivious acts, as well as in adultery and concubinage. The parents of the female seduced, abducted, raped, or abused may also recover moral damages. So, recognition of offspring multiple rape. When three persons, one after another, rape a woman, not one may be required to recognize the offspring of the offended woman, it being impossible to determine the paternity thereof. Defendant cannot be sentenced to acknowledge the offspring because the character of the origin prevents it, for the woman is married. So kung minyo iyang ma-rape niya, nakaanak sila, dili nga pwede i-acknowledge ang katong iyang anak. Cannot be made to support the offspring. Liability of ascendants, guardians, teachers, and other persons entrusted with the custody of the offended party. The ascendants, guardians, curators, teachers, and any person who by abuse of authority or confidential relationship shall cooperate as accomplices in the perpetration of the crimes embraced in the chapter 2nd, 3rd, and 4th of this title shall be punished as principals. Teachers or other persons in any other capacity entrusted with the education and guidance of youth shall also suffer the penalty of temporary special disqualification in its maximum period to perpetual special disqualifications. Any person falling within the terms of this article and any other person guilty of corruption of minors for the benefit of another shall be punished by special disqualification from filling the office of guardian. Persons who cooperate as accomplices but are punished as principals in rape, seduction, abduction are ascendants, guardians, curators, teachers, and any other person who cooperates as accomplice with abuse of authority or confidential relationship. Ang ilang liability ani is principal,